So throughout the whole experience, this is honest. Throughout the whole experience, we celebrated one time, and it was when the film crossed 1 million views on day 2. Jason brought some champagne in the office, and we just celebrated the fact that the whole point of the campaign, or the biggest point of the campaign, was to make the newsworthiness of the LRA and Joseph Kony news. To make it known, to start having the LRA and Joseph Kony known in the public consciousness of everyday Americans was even the goal at the beginning. And so it really was, day 2, 3, 4, then the media started contacting us, our phones ringing literally off the hook from virtually every outlet that we know of, from in the US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, China, Brazil. I mean, it was crazy. And one lesson learned, so to speak, is if you're going to launch a campaign that attracts the global media, go into it with your PR team being more than just one intern.
What do you guys think you did so right that got 100 million people to watch this many times, send it to their friends, and really get behind it?
What a great question.
Thanks.
I think, I think the film was a simple human story. When in the fall, our last campaign in the fall for Invisible Children, it was called The Frontline. And it was all about where the LRA is right now. And it was bringing stories from the DRC and CAR. For us, it was our most sophisticated campaign. We sold this thing called a Frontline kit that had maps, and it had a book inside of it that had like timelines and dates and stats. And we do most of our screenings in high school gymnasiums. That is the nature of Invisible Children's model, is we go tour our film to schools. So we literally do an assembly at a high school. We show the film for 30 minutes right after Algebra 2, and then we try to encourage 17-year-olds to care about this. And so in the fall, we were selling them this, we're trying to get them to buy this thing called a Frontline kit that had all this stuff, and people looked at it like homework, and they didn't want it. The campaign really struggled. And so when we were sitting around talking about what can we do new, what can we do that would more galvanize attention, we said, well, we literally said, how do we make this story so digestible that a 5-year-old can understand it? And Jason's like, well, why don't we just talk to a 5-year-old? And that's when the idea of him sharing with his son for the first time, Gavin, who just turned out to be the cutest kid on the planet, for those of you who've seen the movie, let's explain what Daddy does to Gavin. And I think the simpleness and the human connection between Jason and Jacob, this boy that he met that radically changed Jason's life, and then Jason and his son, 5-year-old son Gavin, I think made it that compelling emotional piece, because I think emotion is key to getting people to care about these kind of issues. I think it has to be emotional, and it has to connect to one person. Nick Kristof has written about this a lot, where the human psyche, the human brain has not evolved to have empathy towards the masses in the way that it has evolved to have empathy for someone right in front of you. If you see someone hurting right next to you, you do something about it. But if there's 1 million people hurting, you're not 1 million times more empathetic, you're actually way less empathetic. So those are some of the thinking that goes behind the campaign, and I think that is one of the reasons that the film touched people. And then the end of the movie, if you notice, the call to action was share this. It was get this out there. If you believe and you want to do something, believe in this message, share this with your friends and family, reach out to these celebrities on Twitter, ask these, we actually had a top 20 list, 20 culture makers from diverse backgrounds. We said we want them to go on the record believing that if Jay-Z, Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, Bill O'Reilly, Rush Limbaugh, and Ellen all said something about one issue, those unlikely allies, that's newsworthy. And so all that kind of came together, and people actually did it. They really shared it on Facebook, on Twitter, with their friends, with their family.
This is the lessons learned here, clearly. I mean, even I'm listening for my own life as a narrative fiction movie director. What you're saying is, as you were saying, these New York Times stories, somebody, if it bleeds, it leads. You're appealing to an emotional level. And it gets a lot of traction. But look at the amount of traction it got when you appealed to the good emotional level of people. Not their worst kinds of emotions, but their best. And that's when it exploded, and it became something people really could embrace. And it also felt genuine. It didn't feel manipulative in a cynical way. It was real, and Gavin, the little boy, is real, and it did make it very personal. And as I know, a lot of creative activists in the room and storytellers in the room, the storytelling in this video is extraordinary and real and honest, even though it's still just a movie, it's still manufactured, it's still edited, it didn't really go that way, but the story is clear.
But it is our real life. You know, it really is 8 years of Jason's life that thankfully we bring a camera everywhere we go. And that, I think that genuineness did come across, especially at the beginning. Sorry to cut you off, but your point about how when people started kind of taking away that authenticity through allegations or skepticism, taking away the questions of what is the motivation behind this? You know, wondering who's behind this? Is this sincere? That really did damage to young people who care about authenticity and sincerity getting involved or staying involved.